Lonely CEO saw a poor single mom returning baby formula. What he did next changed everything. Desmond Radcliffe was standing 3 places back in the checkout line at a suburban grocery store. He'd never normally set foot in his usual routine involved a driver, a doorman, and a refrigerator restocked by someone else entirely. But his 4-year-old daughter Sable had insisted on picking out her own snacks for their weekend together. And somewhere in the last 2 hours, picking out snacks had turned into an entire unplanned grocery run neither of them had expected. He was 47, the founder and CEO of a fintech company, worth more money than he'd ever managed to feel emotionally connected to. And a widower for 2 years now, raising Sable on the specific. Careful custody schedule, his late wife's absence, had forced him to learn from scratch. He held his daughter on his hip, half listening to her narrate the merits of a particular brand of fruit snacks. When the woman 2 places ahead of them, in line, caught his attention. She was young, exhausted in the particular way new parenthood carves into a person's face. A baby bundled against her chest and a knit hat too big for his head. She'd set a small pile of groceries on the belt bread, a few canned goods, a container of baby formula, and Desmond watched, without meaning to intrude, as the cashier rang up her total and the woman's expression shifted into something quiet and practiced. The specific composure of someone who'd had to do this exact calculation in public before. "I'm going to need to put the formula back," she said quietly to the cashier. "Just the rest, please." The cashier, a teenager who looked deeply uncomfortable with the transaction unfolding in front of a line of waiting customers, processed the return without comment, sliding the formula container aside. The woman, her name, Desmond would learn shortly, was Ren Castellan, gathered her remaining bags with the efficient, unhurried calm of someone managing an indignity she'd clearly rehearsed managing gracefully, and turned to leave. Desmond didn't think about it. He simply stepped forward, set his own items on the counter, and said to the cashier, "Add the formula back to her order. I'll cover it." Ren turned back, startled, her expression cycling quickly through confusion, and then something more guarded. "Oh no, that's really not necessary. I appreciate it, but it's not a big gesture," Desmond said, gently, aware of how the offer could land wrong if handled carelessly. "I've got a 4-year-old who just spent 20 minutes debating fruit snack flavors. I promise, this is the least dramatic thing that's happened to me at a grocery store today." Sable, on his hip, looked at the baby in Ren's arms with the frank curiosity only small children manage, and said, "Is your baby hungry?" Ren's composure cracked, just slightly, at that. "He is," she admitted. "I'm sorry. I don't usually let strangers pay for things." "I promise I'm not usually in this position. You don't have to explain anything," Desmond said. "Please, let me get it." She let him, eventually, with the particular reluctance of someone unused to accepting help gracefully. Desmond paid for both orders together, and found himself, a few minutes later, standing in the parking lot beside Ren's car, an aging sedan, with a dent in the rear bumper, while she settled her son into his car seat. "Can I ask what happened?" Desmond said carefully. "You don't have to tell me anything. If there is something more going on, I might actually be in a position to help more than just today's groceries." Ren hesitated, visibly weighing whether to open up to a stranger who'd just paid for her formula in a checkout line. "My husband left 6 months ago," she said finally. "Right after Milo was born. I'm working 2 part-time jobs, neither of which offers enough hours to qualify for benefits. And this month rent went up $40, which doesn't sound like much unless you're counting every single dollar the way I am right now." Desmond listened without the reflexive discomfort some people bring to hearing about financial hardship. He'd built an entire career around numbers, understood better than most exactly how quickly a stable life could tip into crisis over a $40 rent increase and 2 part-time jobs that didn't add up to enough hours. "What kind of work are you doing?" he asked. "Administrative stuff, mostly. Data entry. I was actually a project coordinator before Milo was born, full-time. Benefits, all of it. I got let go during my maternity leave company, said it was a restructuring. But I've always suspected the timing wasn't a coincidence." Desmond didn't offer her money outright. Some instinct told him that would flatten the moment into charity in a way that might do more harm than good to her sense of herself, especially given how carefully she'd handled the humiliation of the checkout line just minutes earlier. Instead, he asked for her number, told her honestly who he was and what his company did, and made a promise he fully intended to keep. He'd have his HR team review her background against a genuinely open position. His own operations team was struggling to fill a remote coordinator role. Full benefits, hours flexible enough to work around childcare, not created for her specifically, but real, needed, and a legitimate fit for someone with her exact experience. "I'm not offering you a favor," he said, echoing, without knowing it, a sentiment he'd need to repeat more than once over the following weeks. "I'm offering you an interview for a job that actually needs filling. What happens after that is entirely up to whether you're the right fit, which I suspect you probably are." Ren looked at him for a long moment, clearly working through whether this was too good to be true, whether accepting felt like more debt she couldn't afford to owe a stranger. "Why?" she asked finally. "You don't know me. You could have just paid for the formula and driven away." Desmond considered the question. "Honestly, because I've had more money than I know what to do with for about 8 years now. And it's rarely once made me feel like I was doing anything that actually mattered," he said. "And because 2 years ago, when my wife died, more strangers helped me through logistics I didn't know how to handle than I ever expected, and I never really got the chance to pay any of it forward properly. This felt like an opportunity I didn't want to talk myself out of." The interview happened the following week. Ren got the job on her own merits. Desmond deliberately stayed out of the hiring decision entirely, leaving it to his operations director, who reviewed her application blind to the grocery store connection, and hired her because her experience genuinely matched what the role needed. She started 3 weeks later, working from home around Milo's schedule, with benefits that covered pediatric care Desmond hadn't even realized, until she mentioned it months later. She'd been going without for her son. Desmond and Ren's paths crossed periodically after that company events. The occasional coordinated pickup when Sable and Milo, over time, became genuinely fond of each other during rare overlapping visits to the office. Nothing romantic developed between them, not immediately, and Desmond was careful never to let the dynamic feel like it carried any unspoken expectation attached to the help he'd offered that first day. What grew instead slowly, over more than a year, was something neither of them had been looking for. A friendship built on an honesty neither had expected to find in circumstances that had started with a checkout line and a returned container of formula. It was Sable, eventually, nearly 2 years later, who asked her father the question neither adult had quite worked up the nerve to ask each other. "Do you like Ren?" She asked bluntly, watching her father and Ren laugh together at a company picnic while Milo and Sable built something elaborate and structurally questionable out of paper plates nearby. "I do," Desmond admitted, mostly to himself. "Good," Sable said, with the airtight logic of a 6-year-old. "Milo's basically already my brother. You should just make it official." They took it slowly, deliberately, both of them aware of how easily gratitude and genuine connection could blur into something neither wanted to build a relationship on top of. It took another 8 months of careful, unhurried time together before either of them acknowledged, out loud, that what had started with a stranger paying for baby formula in a grocery store checkout line had become something neither of them had expected to find again. Desmond, after 2 years of a loneliness he'd never fully admitted even to himself. And Ren, after months of believing she'd have to build the rest of her life entirely alone. "I still think about that day at the checkout," Ren told him once, watching their 2 children, hers and his, asleep on the couch together after a long weekend, tangled up in the easy, uncomplicated way children build families out of whoever happens to love them. "I was so embarrassed, I almost didn't let you pay." "I'm glad you did," Desmond said. "It's the best $12 I've ever spent. And I've made some genuinely enormous business decisions in my life." $12 of formula, Ren said, laughing, and somehow it turned into this. "Turns out," Desmond said, "sometimes the biggest changes in your life start with the smallest, most ordinary kindness. You just don't know it yet." Standing in line. The end.